marketplace platforms. I think Facebook right now is content to let the market like kind of optimize their own advertising for the time being. But it's essentially just, you know, a technological layer on Facebook self-serve ads. I mean, that's really what it is. And those are inherently remanufacturable. You know, obviously getting in early allows you to sit on a larger pile of data. But at some point, I'd imagine Facebook is going to look at the, you know, a spreadsheet somewhere and say, whoa, we're only taking like X% of that. We could probably take more. And they'll start taking more and maybe even more, and maybe eventually, you know, make that, you know, something that they do. I mean, right now, it's hard to say, and I think they're content with doing the big, you know, like 7-figure deals with brands. But there's the long tail advertising model is pretty good. You know, Google could vouch for that. So, I mean, we'll see where that goes.
Well, if Facebook didn't exist, where would all that money be going? Because, you know, as we were saying a couple of minutes ago, it's different than display as we've known it, but it's certainly not Google search either. So where would that money be spent today if it didn't exist?
Well, I personally don't think it's really coming from search as much.
Yeah.
Because people have pretty scientific models that tell them what the
whether it's working, yeah.
Right. What is it working? What's the point of diminishing returns? What's the point of entry? What's my thresholds where I'm maxing out? And maybe there's incremental money not going to search that people experimented with in this DR-ish model on Facebook. But I think there's a bit of it coming from other places that offered what they offered, cheap reach, which is one. It's probably coming from traditional display ad networks. Layers of targeting and hyper-targeting and localized targeting that might be coming from some of the larger portals, and probably from some of those other experimental budgets that people were reserving for video, for mobile, for display advertising in general, right? It depends. Some of it might be coming from traditional forms of media that just aren't working as well, whether that's classifieds or yellow pages or even things like TV, print, and radio. But it's hard to pin it to any one thing. I think people often look at what's going on with the portals and what's going on with Facebook, and they try to make a correlation and just say, well, if Yahoo, AOL, MSN are all down, Facebook's up, that's where it's got to be coming from. And I think it runs much deeper than that.
And I think that's right. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. You want
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think, you know, when we see all the RFPs that come in the door, I just think it's a reallocation of budgets and a reallocation of objectives at this stage. So I think it's not new dollars. Maybe there's some incremental or maybe there's some experimental budgets in there, but for the most part, it's just a reallocation and it's a shift the way there's always been in this business.
You know, I've been in the advertising business for over 3 decades now, and one thing I've noticed about clients is that they tend to buy whichever name is put in their faces most frequently. Right now, the flavor du jour is Facebook. It may be somebody else later on, but there's a larger issue at play in terms of who do you buy and where would that money go in the absence of a franchise like Facebook. And I think that by and large for big brand advertisers, you know, the great albatross around the neck that's hung around the neck of digital for the last, and I've been in digital for 27 years now, but the great neck that's hung around, the great albatross that's hung around the neck of digital all that time, and one of the reasons why I've turned into the Andy Rooney of the digital business. I'm such a curmudgeon.
Good. Somebody
now.
had to take the torch. Thank you.
The reason for that is because there's a reason why digital media budgets remain just a miserly fraction of their TV counterparts, and a reason why TV always gets bought first. It's because scalable reach is the only non-discretionary line item in any big branding spend. And scalable reach is the one thing, despite all the sophisticated technologies, all the intermediaries, all the guys that are dragging money out of the media food chain, that's the one thing that digital hasn't been able to deliver. Brands are always going to look to satisfy their need for scalable reach first. What we're seeing in recent days, the real existential crisis in the media channels right now is the loss of scalable reach on television. As television audiences become more fragmented and as they lose audience share on an individual franchise basis, big advertisers are going to find it more and more difficult to pick up that reach elsewhere. So that's why they turn to the big mega media agencies. They're the only guys with the wherewithal and the firepower to somehow concatenate a million brands, a million publishers and a million media franchise in order to achieve scalable reach. It's the only way, the only guys that can do it are the big brand. That's why they all emerged all of a sudden in the mid-1990s, is because they suddenly had derivatives of the spreadsheet that drove their ability to be there and do that at that point in time. We're very much creatures of our tools, and what we found in recent days is that scalable reach is going away and it's being replaced by a million different little pockets of reach here, reach there. The only thing scalable about at Google's paid search is Google's accounts receivables. It doesn't deliver scale for advertisers. It can't, Jed Clampett back in the 1960s used to talk to 60 million people a week. He'd look around nowadays and take a look, he'd shake his head and say, pitiful, just pitiful.
So do you guys think that, so Facebook, scalable reach, is it? Discuss.
So I'm gonna partially disagree. Okay. Maybe mostly disagree, I don't know, but there's a little bit of me that agrees with you.
Chair throwing is permitted.
So I don't think scalable reach is the issue. I think you can hit just as many people, and yes, maybe it's because of TV's diminishing reach, but you hit just as many people on a popular, like, YouTuber's channel on YouTube as you do, on an episode of Mad Men on AMC. They're obviously...
Well, and that's only because the typical episode of Mad Men only reaches 3 million people.
Well, right, but it's still a TV ad buy on one of the most talked about shows on television, yet it doesn't correlate. I think the big difference here is in scarcity, but it's not of scalable reach, it's in the synchronous reach. So advertisers go for the television, the big hits on television, because they're reaching a lot of people all at once in a moment that is potentially talked about all at the same time. And it's, it's like it's performing on a stage in front of several million people as opposed to performing on a separate stage for each one of those several million people, which is more of what digital's become. I mean, and in a world where, like, you can't necessarily, like, hit everybody by buying the MySpace homepage or the Yahoo homepage for that matter.
No, you can't do it that way.
Right. So, like, the synchronous reach aspects of digital are becoming, more difficult to find, and those moments are obviously, if they are found again, are going to be priced accordingly. But I think that's why television CPMs are going up. It's because there is a scarcity of ways in which, to your point, because of the diminishing reach, that you can reach several million people at a time. And it's why, Thursday nights on NBC is a dismal failure, even though, like, those shows are pretty funny. It's because they're not reaching even close to what the other networks are delivering in terms of synchronous reach, and that's what drives those prices up and the spends higher.
But CPMs are going up, and the spends are maintaining or even going up to a certain extent, at least in the upfront, from television, not because of synchronous reach, because it's simple reach. It's something that for 30 years hasn't changed a whole hell of a lot, and therefore many people that are making those decisions know it well. They're very comfortable with it, and the complexity that exists in the digital world is something that has been, for the better part, sorted out in more mature media. And I don't want to get into that debate, but it's pretty hard to make an apples-to-apples comparison to what digital offers versus what TV or print offer because of the complexity issue. And
the one thing it doesn't offer is the simplicity.
Right, and as a result of it, all the bells and whistles in the world make a lot of people's heads spin, and they go back to what they're comfortable with, and they go back to what's proven. By the way, when I put X amount of GRPs in the air, why products move off the shelf. Now that is changing, and I think the models are adjusting, and I think people's mindsets are adjusting, but it's not happening as quickly as the digital world is evolving and becoming more and more complex.
I think that's the promise too, right, of everything in digital is, it's personalization, it's sequential, it's one builds on top of the other. So we can do, it's all this stuff with ad tech, sure, it's complicated, but the potential upside is so much more dramatic than we can get through any other channel. I mean, Facebook, we're talking about Facebook, so if that plays a role, social plays a role in that. So it becomes
I'd like to challenge the idea that the uplift is more substantial through the addition of high-tech intermediaries in the food chain. I just don't see any evidence of that. In the 30 years that I've been doing this stuff, all I've seen is performance on a per-unit basis go down. And especially accelerated since the mid-1990s with the introduction of digital bandwidth and digital media.
But is
and not only that, but convenience which is the mainstay of the media business. You know, the only reason people ever used to talk to a media rep or hire a media agency was because they didn't want to do that shitty work themselves.
But is that a result of you can't trade a Facebook Marketplace ad for a 30-second television spot, or is that a result of people not tuning into as many ads in all these different places that are now spending time versus the 30-second television spot that they used to absolutely never miss because their eyes were glued to that television?
I'm not arguing that people's attention is more fraction than it used to be, or more fragmented than it used to be, and that people consume media in a whole lot more different places. You know, every digital gadget that we've given to consumers over the years, ostensibly to increase the consumption of media and presumably the ads that pay the freight. In point of fact, has also helped provided consumers with additional ways to avoid the ads. So what we have now is a situation where the one thing we can say with pretty much with certainty, at least statistically, is that no one goes anywhere for the ads, and that everybody is equipped and inclined to avoid them. And the question is, what do we do about it? You know, how do we, for the advertiser, for the guy paying the freight, you know, all of us as industry intermediaries, you know, and there are very few advertisers here, I would guess, but most of us as industry intermediaries that provide services that somehow or other we would argue, you know, boost performance in the food chain for our clients, you know, we tend to get a little blinded by our own Kool-Aid. We drink a lot of Kool-Aid, especially in the digital, which I found is the most dense of all the media in terms of what I call the inertia tax. It's the amount of money out of every media dollar that comes out to, you know, to support the inertia generated by the medium itself.
Yeah,
a lot of
Ian,
inertia.
I was saying, like, to your point about the intermediation, I think, I mean, that I agree with you on, in the sense that, and I guess maybe this is more of a question for Ari, but like, I feel like the role of technology, I should know how to say that word, technology intermediary in today's landscape is more on inventory yield optimization than actual performance. Like, and instead of saying, we're going to help your ads perform better, a lot of that technology is being applied to publishers to say, deliver more performance by serving less impressions, so you can sell more impressions to deliver more.
Well, I think there's a combination of both, actually.
Right.
I think it's performance for sure, actually, because I think what's happening with a lot of these platforms is there's a level of multivariate testing that's going on, and we're doing two things. One, we're optimizing based on better performance, so maybe we're serving less impressions to get to that ultimate goal, but ultimately it's because we've done some optimization on the performance side first. Right. So, but
it's not like you see to the point, it's like, it's not like you're seeing click-through rates go up.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're going up. I would say they're more prevented from going down necessarily than actually.
Come spend some time with us.
Oh, great.
They go up a lot. They actually
I can vouch for that too. I mean, using
our platform. I mean, I don't know what the average click-through rate is on Facebook Marketplace. 0.013, I think, is what it is right now. We have campaigns that are 5x to 10x above that. Right. And that's due to the platform and the optimization that we're doing on the back end.
Well, that's good. I mean, I don't. The challenge of delivering better display is in increasing response rates on those display ads historically. I mean, I would say that we are evolving beyond the number of responses to those ads and more to, again, like a quality engagement scenario. But what's preventing that from happening, even if we're increasing response rates, is determining the value of what those interactions are. And I think that's holding everything back. And it's frustrating because, you know, you even go into like client meetings. I'll call my clients on this. Like, they don't spend enough time researching what digital engagement means to their business.
Lounge, you had an opinion, actually.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's for me, the piece that I'm committed to putting in is attribution, right? Because if I can really put in attribution and I can, and so, I mean, the wireless example, you know, somebody's not looking for a new wireless carrier every single day. So, you know, we have a fairly long sales cycle, so if I can start to understand the effect of display social search across, you know, longer time frames and value that, not every single click has to create, in fact, not every interaction needs to create, you know, a conversion. It's only that last one. Right. So all I've got to do is just kind of keep pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. Something's got to start it. So it's really putting all those pieces together, and that's what I think has been somewhat missing, but the technology seems to be maturing now, and I think that has the potential to be a real game changer.
So is it a matter of, I mean, I pose this question to all of you guys, is it a matter of someone, Facebook, Nielsen, whomever, figuring out what the equivalent sort of factors are to reach people, or the right frequency levels are to reach people within that platform or set platforms that would be complementary to, if not supplementary to, then other channels, to be able to sway spend, and take it away from television, take it away from more costly media, take it away from media that might be quicker to scale but might be more wasteful? I mean, what are the, I guess, what's the evidence that we need to start to move the needle?
Well, I mean, I think if Facebook establishes a role as, say, like the engagement advertising leader, you're looking at them being able to optimize all the ads on its platform based upon social actions that people have. And let's call it like visible word of mouth, for example, like something that we used to like collect press clippings for and say, like, look, it's working. Like now we can actually prove how far and fast information or our brand message travels. And then you could track that through, of course, to a transaction if you embed some tracking code on your site. And you could do that attribution like you're talking about. That not only starts with the first degree display, but also the second, third, fourth, fifth degrees of displays that are created as a result of that first person interacting with it. And I think, again, that's where Facebook is, poised to be a beast, a gorilla. I think that's in the description of the panel.
How many pounds?
Right, in terms of media planning exercises, once we, again, understand what the values of those kinds of things are worth, because we'll just continue to feed it. And I think right now we're a little misguided in the sense that we're trying to build very subscribed to channels, basically, the equivalents of mailing lists, in terms of like likes on these channels, right? And then, putting programming in those channels in the hopes that people will, again, use those to create impressions. We count that as earned media. I think it all, again, just like everything else that you're working on right now, is all, including your body probably, is going to blend together and become one. So we're going to have to figure out, again, it's like, again, if it's engagement that we're after, Facebook's platform can be integral or will be integral to providing that kind of analysis.
I mean, when do you talk clients either out of Facebook or at least putting Facebook in perspective? Because we have a tendency in this industry to just get all hot and bothered by the hot new thing. I mean, Jeff referred to that, and that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be there or that you should pull all your budget out of this and put it into that. So, is there sort of an argument for against Facebook or like a way of putting it in context?
I think there's a broader argument against the advertising as intermediary model, which so far Facebook, like every other online franchise, has adopted as its mainstay ad revenue engine. I think as long as we remain...
So it's just,
I think
it'll be
it's the wrong
supported by
model.
ads.
It's the wrong model for the wrong medium. The idea that we can somehow get people who are en route from one place to another perpetually online, with the possible exception of tablets, where people have more of a tendency to lean back and enjoy the moment. Otherwise, when we're seated at a computer or looking at an ad on our telephone, we're always en route from one place to another, and the last thing we want is to be interrupted on our journey. The last thing we want is that intervention moment, and the whole idea of brand advertising is that it has to intervene. It has to intervene, or it has to be the destination itself. I would suggest, and I would recommend, a return, a kind of a retro-evolutionary return to an advertising as destination model that, instead of taking the ad and putting it in the content, takes the content and puts it in the ad, so it's there when people get there.
So Jeff, answer me this. So Procter & Gamble, I don't know how many years ago, created soap operas, right? That's kind of how it happened. So soap operas are all dying right now, and they're dying because there's social and casual gaming that's now taking off. It is the new soap operas. That's where all the women are watching.
That's right.
That's what they're doing right now.
It's closer to what you're talking about in gamification. Is closer
that's
to
exactly right. So
a destination
of
model.
Facebook's 750 million users, 300 million of those are playing casual games and social games.
Correct.
So putting advertising on Facebook in those games, would that be deemed a good brand experience?
I think that's much closer to the mark. Anything that shifts the brand message from the intermediary environment, where all the clutter and all the competition and all the exit links take place, and all the competitive branding takes place, and shifts that to a cleaner, more pristine, destination, where maybe they're the only, a la the soap opera model. The early guys in the 1930s and 1940s and 50s, the early pioneers of radio and TV understood something intrinsically that we seem to have forgotten some years ago. And it's that nobody goes anywhere for the ads. That the ad and the content, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, 20 Mule Team Borax, Death Valley Days, that they were joined together at the hip on the marquee in the same size type. That you didn't go, and they knew way back then that nobody went there for the ads. Nobody went to see the 20 Mule Team Borax ads.
Yeah,
They just happened to be there when they showed
People
up.
also
Yeah.
used to go there for the quality of the content, though. And the content quality sucks now in general because there's so much of it. I mean, it's
I think
impossible.
there's a lot of great content out
There
there.
is, but
a
there's,
lot of great
I think if
content.
you like held it up all against each other, you'd say, wow, this is a lot of crap. We've got like, if you look at the sequel, like the sequel business is a pretty good business in Hollywood.
Yeah, Adam, why don't you, and
Well, I
then
was
we're
just
going to
gonna
go to
say,
questions, yeah.
If you look outside the Facebook Marketplace model and you look at their engagement ads, right? One ad per page, the only ad on the page. They try to sell it as a roadblock. They try to make it more immersive, more of a brought to you by sponsored-like experience. So you're not necessarily competing with any other brands because you have ownership of the page, but what you're competing with are the brands of the people you're friends with, right? So if I have 500 people on a list and I have a ticker going and I have all these different stories that are not sponsored, that are just natural, that are organic, that are things I'm choosing to consume and spend time with, and that's why people are spending so much time there, that and gaming and other forms of entertainment. Does advertising fit into that sort of environment? Because you're not competing, Coke versus Pepsi, you're competing, Coke versus Ian, and that makes it really
One of the
really
things
tricky.
I like
Yeah,
about
I-
the gamification model is that it doesn't necessarily require contextual relevance to work. For instance, there is no, Budweiser doesn't give a rat's ass who wins the Super Bowl, and there's no direct relationship between beer and football. And yet,
Sure there is.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
You haven't been to my house.
lately.
It depends on whose house you live in. We're going to have to, I want to just give everybody opportunity to ask questions. Oh, yes, right here? Yeah, we got the mic for you. Sorry to cut you guys off, but.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about Shelley Deneroff Thompson, SDT Media. Can you talk a little bit about how the different demographics use Facebook and how they engage with the ads, the olders versus the youngers?
So we're seeing basically both ends of those spectrums start looking alike each other. And as you get closer to the fringes, they start like wrapping around and looking like the other ones. So it's the activities that are performed on Facebook or that are powered by Facebook, like games, for example, sometimes dictate where those demographics are. But in general, we are seeing similar interactions. There are just reasons for those interactions that are different. So for like deals and discounts, that's going to skew older, whereas content might skew younger. As for example, the reason to like a brand on Facebook.
And one of the more interesting things is that half the usage is via mobile, where it's not monetized at all.
Right.
And that just seems not to have any, there's not a lot of data on it, but everything we see is that it's everyone updating their status, it's everyone checking in, it's everyone spending about the same inordinate amount of time staring at their 3.5-inch screen. And there's very little a brand can do there to break through,
Yeah,
let alone fit in.
And the point about that, and just going back to something that Jeff said earlier, is that I think there is a spirit in Facebook about keeping that kind of pristine environment. The fact that there are no ads on mobile doesn't mean that you don't get brand messages through your mobile device, right? So, I would say a good percentage of the reason for buying those ads on Facebook is to create some kind of experience that you opt into that ultimately becomes an item in your news feed. Now they've even added a layer on top of that, which is like top stories, so it's even tougher to get into the newsfeed. So I think they're doing their part to keep your experience with Facebook as relevant as possible. And again, depending on who you are, that's what that experience is going to be. That's why when people complain about Twitter being a bunch of ad people talking to each other, it's because that's who they're following on Twitter. And if you've got annoying friends, Facebook is going to be annoying. It's just it's such a Yeah, it's totally personalized. And what my Facebook is different than yours. It's different than than Adam's, and that's just the way. I think that's kind of beautiful. That also makes it again like really difficult for advertisers and marketers.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Okay. How are we doing on time? What? Oh, we have 2 minutes. Does anybody else want to add to that discussion? I mean, so why are the older people more interested in deals? We're supposed to be the ones with all the money.
I mean, I think people are looking to the number one reason to interact with a brand on Facebook is for some kind of promotion. And that's either to win something or to get some kind of discount, to be rewarded for a particular kind of loyalty, which unfortunately majority of the time is purchased. So that's that's people are thinking about that. The more discretionary you are about your discretionary income, I think the more you care about stuff like that. And brands are very sensitive. I mean, I think it was P&G that it usually is, that just announced, oh no, it was Walmart, I take that back, that just announced a big commitment with Facebook to actually create pages for every single one of its Walmart stores. So in doing so, they can create like custom like rollbacks and like drive people into the store physically to take advantage of a particular deal on a particular item that particular Walmart is launching. And obviously that is informed by the behavior of Walmart shoppers.
Yeah.
Which is just an evolution of the FSI, which is an evolution of their own website, which is an evolution of their own local TV spots.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about local, but that is a huge.
Well,
I mean, that is
whole other
another
panel.
gigantic reason why this stuff is important. Is for the local relevance, and of course, that's never going to be more important when we're paying for stuff with our phones.
Yeah. So
Can I assert the mobile question? Ian, you raised it before. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you. I barely use Facebook on desktop anymore at all. At some point, the momentum at Facebook is really going to move mobile, and as far as I can tell, other than finding a way to get a brand into somebody's newsfeed, there doesn't seem to be a mobile Facebook strategy even for brands.
I mean, I assume there will be. I work from home, so that doesn't apply to me. I'm on my laptop all day.
So I think just observational. I think the mobile strategy for brands today should be about apps for Facebook. So if you've got the new Facebook for iPhone or the new Facebook for iPad, you can get a glimpse of this in that it's actually an HTML5 environment. So it's actually a web browser. So it's not even fully apped. Like most of the content in there, in that Facebook experience is delivered through a web browser. That also means like when you swipe it to the right, all the links to your apps that come up on the left-hand side can actually drive to an app that's on your phone or on your iPad. So I think a lot of the attention that's now being paid to what should my page be on Facebook should also be like how do my branded apps interact with Facebook mobile.
But how do you get people to add your app?
Well, make them good, relevant, integrate with other apps. I mean, games. I mean, obviously the apps that people use on Facebook 6 months from now are going to be very different than the ones that they're using now as the new Facebook rolls out. So.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it. Thanks, panelists, and thank you, audience. And I guess we'll move on. Well, now we're going on to coffee, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Catherine.